Welcome back to another mini episode of the Authentic Man podcast. I'm your host, David Chambers, a men's dating, relationship and intimacy coach with over 15 years experience of working with men. And today we're going to talk about something that's actually really close to home for me, actually something that used to really ruin my dating life and relationships, which is this kind of fault finding, this always finding something to criticize partners about. Always looking for what's wrong with them. It might be you're dating somebody and you suddenly find that, I don't know, on their left toe there's a mole, and all you can start thinking about is that mole, and it blows out proportion, and then you don't want to see them, and it becomes this massive thing. Or it's being critical, always seeing where they're doing something wrong, or they could be doing something better. Or it can also show up in ways of just kind of like no one ever being good enough, like, oh no, that's the thing that's wrong with them, I can't date them, I can't be in relationship with them, that kind of rhetoric, right, that happens. And I say this because it's something that really happens to me, still happens to me, right, and get in the way of my dating life as well. And I've had to learn to be with this and manage it in various ways, actually, which I'll talk about today. It's just like really judgmental behavior, isn't it? Really judgmental behavior, and often it's a level of almost perfectionism we're looking for, that sometimes we direct ourselves as well, but we definitely kind of mentally direct it at other people. And why this does so much harm is because it actually just creates a lot of distance between you and someone else. It kind of comes up with this like overthinking and always kind of like ruminating on these small things, like, oh my God, she said the word in this way, like, oh my God, this drives me mad. And then you just notice every time she may say something in a certain way. And obviously this is an issue that women also suffer from. And it's like it becomes a preoccupation, doesn't it? It becomes like this inability to focus on anything else when you're with your partner. Is like, or the person you're dating is just this thing that you don't like, this thing that annoys you, this thing that means they're not good enough. And it actually just gets in your way of seeing anything good about them, right? Because you hyper focus on that one thing, or you hyper focus and then project it into the future as well. Like, oh, they're shy, and if they're shy, that means that they'll never be able to get along with my family, because my family are very boisterous and they don't like shy people, and then we could never have a relationship, and she'll never get along with my friends, and it's all doomed. That's the sort of thing that you find yourself telling yourself in your mind, whether that's conscious or unconscious, right? And like I said, it's like a box ticking exercise sometimes for some people as well. It's like always keeping people at arm's length. You're always looking for a reason to push someone away. It's a very standard thing that people who are avoidant do. They're always looking for ways to kind of create a distance between them and people they're dating. And it can lead to us feeling very lonely a lot of the time as well, because, we never let people get through our defenses or through past the stage of them, actually getting kind of close to us. So one of the things you have to really acknowledge is that this kind of criticism, this flaw finding and so forth, it really comes from this inner critic, right? This little voice in your head that's always critical of everything. And I think for avoidant people, often this inner critic is very, very active. And the first thing I work with my clients is that learning that this inner critic isn't who you are. That voice isn't who you are, right? Often that voice is an amalgamation of various people in our lives as we grew up. For myself, it was my father. He could be very critical as well. And I also remember my mother being somewhat judgmental sometimes as well. And we kind of internalize that voice into our minds, right? And we use it to berate ourselves, sometimes other people. And it can be so loud, right? It can be so unforgiving. And it's to learn that it's like, that isn't who we are. Right, that voice is there, but it's not who we are. And that voice isn't even like our own thoughts and opinions a lot of the time. They're, like I said, we've internalized other people's thoughts and opinions. So what did I do to get over this, right, and start to move past this? The first thing is to start to see that voice isn't who I am. It isn't like a voice I have to listen to. It is not an authority on the truth on how life is. It just is looking for something to be wrong. It's looking to protect me in some way, right? And often when it's dating, it's looking to protect me as it's trying to mean that I avoid being too close to anyone and have the potential of being rejected or hurt. And that's a really important thing to start to work with as well. Another thing is to work with these thoughts we often have around the right woman, right? Because often if we make the perfect woman, with no flaws, then everything's going to be great. And it's just to realize that you're never going to meet anyone that is flawless. There's always going to be things about people you dislike, whether that starts off as something quite small, and you find new things along the way, right? Because that's the nature of relationships and nature of the unfolding nature of getting to know somebody. So it's part of this work also is starting to create space between your thoughts and you, because you are not your thoughts. You have thoughts. The thoughts are not who you are, but also you don't have complete control over your thoughts. But are you letting your thoughts control you and your opinions as well? And inside of that is all this thoughts that you find in other people are really meaningless. They have no more meaning than you choose to give them. If you meet a woman and she has a mole on her left side of her lip, for instance, and you think that means it's so unattractive and you can never be with her, does that mole really mean anything other than the meaning that you give it? And it's starting to see that a lot of this stuff is what we choose to give it, or the thought in your mind chooses to give it. And you can also tune out of that voice, that voice telling you that it's terrible, you have to keep your eye on it all the time and so forth. You can just slowly start to go, thank you very much for that piece of information, but I can see that this person is an amazing human being as well, and these are all the other beautiful things, which is also part of the kind of solution I find for men, is that starting to not just pay attention to the thoughts and what's wrong and the judgments, but actually starting to pay a lot of attention to what you like about someone. Because often when we find ourselves in this fault finding, we have a habit of looking for what's wrong and what needs fixing, instead of looking for what's good and what we love about someone. So it's bringing more of your attention to what we really enjoy and we love about someone as well, right? Whether that's the way they smile or the way that they touch us, the way they hold our hands and so forth. And letting go of the idea of that's how it should be, and everything that's outside of shouldn't be there. That's another important thing, because when you say kind of should, it should be there, and everything that should be there, you kind of minimize the good things to being neutral, and you elevate the bad things to be really, really bad. And that means you're kind of really unbalanced in your opinion of people a lot, and often of yourself as well. Another part of this is learning to just express how you feel. It doesn't mean you have to tell someone that you have these thoughts about them, but actually just expressing it to yourself, right? And being with the feelings and emotions that kind of arise around that. Because often we have some feelings of inadequacy ourselves and so forth that we're just avoiding, we overthink on, but we don't actually feel them. We don't actually stop and go, wow, I feel inadequate in these certain ways, or I don't feel good enough. And just feel that emotion for 5-10 minutes. It's not going to completely consume you. That's the fear you have, but actually just feel it. Be with it, right? As well. It's a really important part of feeling the emotions of the insecurity that you have as well. And this piece about the fault finding, it doesn't just go away overnight. It is a definite journey, something you have to practice. It will come up in different areas, and it takes a lot of mindfulness, So again, I recommend, as I always do for people, is a level of meditation, breath work, where you are learning to just observe your thoughts more instead of react to them so much, right? Creating space, because often we just are so reactive, I seen a thought in her. Oh my God, that's something wrong. Oh my God, that means I can never be with her. If you train yourself to just see oh look, my mind is having these thoughts. Oh, I don't need to do anything about that. I know that it's meaningless, right? It's life-changing, that practice. It's not easy necessarily, but it is absolutely life-changing. I can say from my experience and the experience of many of the men that I've worked with as well. So hopefully that's useful. That gives you a little space to, ways in which you can work with this fault finding that shows up for you, and you can, make a real difference. And if you're looking for some more support in this area, maybe you're struggling in relationship to express your emotions and so forth, you can, look for some older podcasts or other podcasts, on these sorts of topics. But if you're looking for some more one-to-one work, then feel free to reach out, and you can get me at @theauthenticman_ on Instagram, or you can get me hello@theauthenticman.net. All those details in the show notes, so you can just send me a message. And if you like a free coaching session, which I offer to people if they're looking for some help, which is a no sales thing. I don't do any of this kind of get you on a call and try to sell you anything. I get you on a call and see how much I can help you. If that's something that would be inviting to you, please feel free to get into contact with me. And if this episode's been useful to you, and you know someone it could be useful for, please feel free to send it over to them, to let them know how that could help them as well. And yeah, that's it for today. Have a wonderful day.